So, hello everyone. I have the pleasure of welcoming today Andrea Gullick to my podcast, and we will be talking about her business and a powerful story that she's experienced within her business. So, first of all, Andrea, what is your business about? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so my business is I'm a guide, I guess, an emotional guide for people to help women in particular feel comfortable in their own skin. So I focus a lot on inner child work, but really truly just helping people be able to be comfortable with who they are and the life that they want to live so that they can make courageous choices and changes to live in alignment with that. Yeah.
That's
So some people will classify that as a coach, some might say it's a mentor. I don't tend to focus on the word. I tend to focus on the journey, but it's really just taking a journey beside people so that they can live out their best life in congruency with their heart. So
that's massive, actually, isn't it?
mm.
Really massive. You couldn't really put it into words.
Not really. I know it's probably a safer game to play for humans to know the words so that they can relate, but a lot of the journey for people is kind of just safety and security and love and trust, and
And being
that's what I
seen as
yeah,
well.
yeah. So
And but
and heard.
you use the modality though, don't you?
I do have a couple. So I'm very heavily, I love essential oils for emotional balancing. So I do intuitive, funny enough, I do intuitive oil readings where I just select oils and then they have an emotional connection. So it can give people like a reading about, maybe they can relate to what the message the oil is giving them. And EFT. So I use a bit of EFT, so some tapping with going back into the inner child, so the timeline, and going and clearing some of that energy around different like woundings, I guess, or different aspects that sort of take us away from our true self, because it's really what our past does, those stories and those experiences that can create suffering. It kind of is just taking us away from the truth of who we are, and it's taking us on a path of somebody else's beliefs or somebody else's thoughts or actions. And I just want people to come back and know who they are before any of that, like at
Before the
you know
conditioning, before the
yeah,
whatever
absolutely.
label has been put on us.
Yeah,
And
before
we
they were
know,
taken down a different path, right? Like
yeah.
a path that's not of their own.
Yeah, because we know that before 7 years old, we just take everything in that people say to us with no filter, no understanding, and it just goes deep. It goes very deep.
And even, obviously with the work that you do, that I know that you know this, but like it even can be in utero, or it can have been a past
Absolutely.
life. And so it's just not that I do that work. I don't do that work. I'm not trained or have any experience with that work. But that's how deep this not true self, or not, our stuff goes, is that we can really be carrying some other stuff. And all I want is for people to recognize that it's not their stuff, and that it's okay to just to leave that. And kind of, I had a beautiful lady explain it the other day about healing, and I really loved it. It was, we don't have to take it, healing is not about taking something out, it's about pouring something in, and that's love.
Mm,
It's like there's nothing there to take out of us. There's
mm.
nothing there to forget or anything. It's just we need to add, and what we need to add is love, so that we can feel safe with who we are, regardless of kind of what the journey has been, or the memories that we have, or the conditioning that we've had. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Wow, that's powerful. How long have you been doing what you're doing? Or were you doing something different before? I'm just curious.
It's been a bit of a journey. I've only been, what I would say, in business or on this path for about 18 months, or just over 12 months, really.
Oh,
I
okay.
was a teacher before this, and I was a hairdresser before that. So this holding space with people, taking a journey, helping them be comfortable in their own skin, is just 18 months. And so I guess when I first came into it, it was very much sort of along the guidelines of a coach. I'd done my coaching accreditation. There's specific ways of how you do that, the questions you ask, and the methodology behind certain techniques and stuff. And as it's evolved and as I've evolved, it's a whole lot more just following my gut instinct and hearing underneath what I heard, if that makes sense.
Oh,
So
absolutely. Absolutely. It's
yeah,
the energy of what we say that speaks more than the actual
yeah,
words.
yeah.
So I admire the fact that you were able to go beyond your training to find that. That's really, but I'm curious about the hairdresser. I hope you don't mind asking questions, because I feel that
No, that's fine.
hairdressers are often the recipients of so many stories, and they have actually a role as space holders for people to come and unpack their issues and everything. So I'm pretty sure you were doing a lot of that work in a different, setting already. What would
Yeah,
you say to that?
absolutely. Well, they think that they should add psychology into the training course, because the hairdresser is usually the first person to find out anything. They
Yeah.
find out all the, because there's the, I don't know how to say the word properly. Is it anonymous? That you're anonymous, really. Like, even though you're still so far
Yes.
removed that it's safe. And that's all anyone, as far as I'm concerned, that's my perspective only, but that's all anyone is actually ever searching for, is
Yeah.
the safe space and the
And to be
safe
heard.
person.
Mm.
So that, yeah, because my belief is that people don't need help, they need love and safety, because
Absolutely.
we can work our own stuff out when
Mm.
we feel safe and loved and heard and seen. And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, I guess I was doing that. And
I think you were preparing
yeah,
for
and the
what
thing
you're doing.
that I reflect on, yeah, sorry.
I think you were preparing for what you're doing today, for
Yeah.
sure.
I think the thing that I've reflected on, and what I recognized when I was a hairdresser, because obviously I went straight into that from school, so I was 18, was the ease that I had to relate to all ages.
Mm.
That was kind of that really stood out, that it was easy for me to talk and communicate and all of that with children, right through to the 90-year-old ladies that come and got their hair set. And to me, that was like, okay, I'm comfortable with a whole range of people. This is really interesting. But I think that was because I was so comfortable with, I've always been really comfortable with speaking about emotions and deep emotions. It doesn't intimidate me, it doesn't make me uncomfortable. And that became to be apparent that that's not how everybody feels.
Mm.
Being vulnerable is actually really, really difficult for people.
Mm.
And I knew that that was a key to who I was and what I needed to do with that, how that gift would play out in down the track, I guess. Yeah.
Mm. I love that. I really do. I also believe that all hairdressers should be trained in Reiki, but that's another story. So that they
Yeah.
understand, because they
Yeah.
absorb so many energies of their clients and everything, because you're just above the person when they talk about and release all those stories and those emotions, and that can be a bit
Like a little sponge.
overwhelming. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So I was going to ask you what led you into it. So what was the turning point where you decided I want to do something different, and how did you choose that different path? Even though we've seen the threat,
Like,
but it's kind of from going to being a hairdresser to being a coach and doing what you do.
okay, yeah. So I went from hairdresser to primary school teacher, and the changing turning of the of that career was because I became widowed at 27 with two little boys. So it was really about and I'd always wanted to do teaching. I deferred to do hairdressing, so it was always there. So I did that primarily for sort of security, and that I didn't have to put my children in daycare on holidays, things like that. That was primarily what occupation is going to actually allow me to nurture my children and be at home the best way possible. And then from that, it really was. My first son was diagnosed with cancer at 2 days old, and we went through his treatment, and then I became widowed 3 years later. And so the things that I had been through, and it's very common that it seems to be a lot of people that experience trauma and manage to actually be able to find their path through that, then feel compelled nearly, or I do, felt compelled to use those lessons and to use the fact that I have a really beautiful life, and I have remarried, I've had another child. My life is really, really beautiful, and I am really, really blessed. And I really want people to know that that is available to them, that the healing and seeing our way through really difficult stuff, that on the other side of that are so many blessings. And that's what I just know that this is my path. This is my path to open people's hearts up to that, to remember who they are and what is available to them.
You're making me tearful. This is so powerful. You're really making me tearful. And so many people need the kind of work that you're doing right now, because 2020 has been very traumatic for a lot of people. But sometimes it's like almost the knock on the door of awakening, isn't it?
Yeah, and I was going to say it's unfortunate that some of the hardest things lead to the biggest blessings, but I guess it's not really. That's just a perspective. While it is really difficult to go through those things, I would not be who I am today, and I would not be creating the impact I am if I didn't experience some of the hardest things I've ever experienced. And so for me, at this stage in my journey, and it is up to the individual, but it's been 14 years since I became widowed. At this stage, all I see is the blessings. All I see is the way in which I can use those things to create a better world. And that's what's important to me. Initially, it was a better world for my children, as in not better as in what they would have had if their dad was alive, but I mean from the trauma, from the pain, from the suffering. It was so important to me to create a better world than that, a better world than a mum who I ended up with mental health. Like it wasn't a walk in the park to get through those things, but that was the catalyst for me wanting to be better, wanting to heal myself and learn my lessons from my pain. And then when I felt like I'd kind of done okay with that, I was like, well, who else? Who else is sitting there wondering if this is as good as it gets, or wondering how they feel better in their own skin? And so that's been the path then. And that's why I guess for me, and following a script as a coach wasn't enough, because it's kind of like that covers the most important thing, and that's someone's heart. Like I needed to get beneath that. I needed to feel deeper than what do you want to achieve with your life. I wanted to get into who do you want to be in your life, and they're very different things. What
Absolutely.
we do and who we are very, very different things. So yeah,
that is profound. I also think that's one of the lessons of COVID, is to learn to be, because we've been taken
100%.
home, the distractions have been taken away from us. Of course, we can still switch the TV on and watch it all day, but that was a big opportunity. And
I think on reflection, like for me personally, it highlighted how uncomfortable so many of us are within our own skin, because when we take the distractions away, and when we take the busyness, and when we take all the action away, all we're left with is just being. And it's not as natural as doing. For a lot of people, it's not natural.
I hold up my hand. I really do. I'm not talking
And
from a pedestal here. I really
yeah,
get it.
and we're all like, I mean, 2020 was the greatest gift for me because it did exactly the same thing. It allowed me the space and the grace to really be able to sit back and breathe into, how do I want to do this? How do I want to show up for people? And that's the thing, we do get that opportunity to be able to reflect on that, but we have to be willing to accept the discomfort at the same time, and it can be really hard to be in the discomfort and stress and be trying to look for the gifts. It's kind of like you got to allow the integration of the discomfort and the stress and the wondering and the confusion of, well, what now and who am I and where to. But that's the beauty of time, is that if you choose to, you can then reflect and go, well, how was that a gift, and what were the gifts in that experience?
And at this
that's what I'm
point,
hoping.
I'd like to chip in here at this point and reflect back to you how powerful your journey's been, thanks to your own choice. Because not everyone who goes through trauma and challenges and extreme difficulties like you have find the gold in it and use it as a transformation. Some people just remain, and it's no judgment, because maybe they haven't had a guide to show them, or maybe they've never met anyone who's done that. So that's where the example of you can come in. But some people, and I can think of my grandmother, for example, who just became bitter from the experience. She lost complete, and we're not here to talk about God, but she just thought God had abandoned her, and that was it. She stopped going to church. Whether it's a good thing or not, we're not going to go into it, but I can see that she didn't have the tools, and it's a generation thing as well, probably, because in her days, it was like, you survived the war, you're happy, just get on with it. And
and that's to be honest, that is what I see with a number of my clients, because I do inner child work. This is the thing, that this is the residual, like, hangover from the suppression of emotion, is that just gets passed down. And for me, it's super important to be that chain breaker. It's super important to shine a light of choice, because that's all it is.
I think that's the gift of our generation, is we've had these opportunities more. I mean, my parents, my dad went into therapy, so he was very brave for his generation. I admire him for that. But that's kind of probably, and especially in France, it was like probably unheard of. But yeah, not many people of his generation had the opportunity, and there was a lot of shame around it as well. If you had if you broke down, that because you weren't strong enough, and you were judged for having mental health issues, for sure. So I'm glad that the world is changing in that respect as well.
Yeah, definitely. And this is I guess this is where there's a choice to be able to look at that. Like, I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful to be a part of a generation where we are doing a lot of work in normalizing, or at least accepting, mental health as a serious illness, and having access to support systems and things like that. Like, how lucky, how fortunate are we? Because I just, for who I am, and it'd be pretty obvious when people tune into this podcast, like, I'm an expresser. I need to be able to express what is going on for me, or I would self-combust. And so I just think, wow, what about all of those, like, people from the war, or women back in the day, with how they lived and how did they manage? And I know that they didn't know any different. But I mean, this is what drives me, is like, I want people to have a voice. I want them to be okay with expressing what is going on for them, so they can make sense of it and realize that there's nothing wrong with them.
There's so much more self-expression in our world right now. And I'm so glad we both can acknowledge that and say how wonderful it is. Like, even this podcast, You know, we can
Yeah.
say whatever we want. You know, before, people just sat in front of their TV. There was no way they could think that they could ever express, even write a book. So it was something that was reserved for scholars, and now everybody can write a book if they want to. And I think that's wonderful. Even that they could write their own story. We just discussed before we started this podcast how healing it is to be able to write your story. For some people, not for everyone.
Yeah.
It's there.
Whatever
The
modality it
opportunity is
takes,
there.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, there's people that can express it. There's so many different art techniques that people use to express art therapy. Like you can write, you can speak, you can like
Dance.
any type of, exactly, like anything. And really that is just about what brings us joy, isn't it? And just the simple understanding and awareness that joy is the healer. Like what brings you joy, like it's part of that being able to manage the discomfort is the amount of joy that you can pour in, the amount of love that you can pour in. It's like it's what helps to dilute. And it's not that we need to divert around it, it's just that we need to be able to like dilute it out so that the pain's not the highest, most focal point. It's like it is there and it is a part of who I am, and I will witness and allow what I need to feel from that experience, but I am going to add in so much love and so much joy and so much happiness and so much choice so that I have something else to also focus on and feel.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of, there are a lot of ways, like we talked about in terms of the distraction, there are a lot of ways that we can go about not feeling.
Oh, I know.
And it's like,
I know. I was frozen
it's okay
for
to
years.
feel. Yeah, it's okay. It's safe to feel. But you have to be in the right environment. You have to be with the right guide or the right people, the right support, because there is nothing worse than going to open up and there's nothing there to support you.
I know that too. Yeah,
not very fun.
That is soul destroying. Yeah.
So
wow. Now what I want to move on now to the meat of this. Well, I know this is I'm saying something awful because in a way I've loved every word that you've said, and it's such a beautiful introduction in a way, or it leads to something really interesting. And what I ask all my guests is to share whatever they want to share about a powerful experience with intuition within their business, just to give people an idea what it's like when you manage to either when you get the intuition, whether you follow it or not, but the lessons that come from it. So what story do you want to share with us today?
Well, this is like perfect timing because the last 6 weeks of my life has been the most wildest ride in the whole world. And it's because I followed my intuition. And it actually is, you were a part of this, Ange. You're not aware of this yet, but you're a part of this. So there's a particular lady she was floating around in other circles that I've been a part of, like collaboration and things like that. And I connected with a few, but I hadn't connected with her. And she commented, I think you might have commented on my post. I don't know how it was, but she commented on something of yours. And when I saw her name and I knew that she was out there and she was connected to a lot of people I knew, I was like, oh, I think I should reach out to her. Maybe I could help her. And something said, no, that's not it. You're not meant to reach out about that. And so I didn't do that. And then she continued to float and she commented on something else, somewhere else. And I had that feeling again. You need to reach out to her. And I'm like, And I've told her, she knows this. So then I went on to her Facebook profile to try to work out, what is this? What am I feeling here? And her husband passed away in the same year that my husband did. Wow. And I was like, I need to reach out to her. I am being told to do this and I can't deny it. And so I messaged and I said, you know a few people that I know. I'd really love to connect. And yep, she was like, yes, let's do that. Our first call, and it was just, there was no agenda. The first time that I would have messaged, there was an agenda. I thought I could help her. The second time was purely, I have to follow my instinct because it's really strong right now. And so we connected on Zoom, and just, it's, I don't know what it is, but it just is. And she was talking about how she is doing a podcast, and like I have my Soulful Living with Andrea, and we're just talking about how we get our story and our message out into the world and what that looks like. And I just had this feeling of asking her whether she'd like to actually do a Facebook Live together, that the dialogue between her and I just was so effortless that maybe the community, our communities out there, might get something out of our conversation. That was, I think, 5 weeks ago. And from that, everything has just rolled like an absolute juggernaut, it feels like. Everything has been easy and seamless. So we have now moved over to StreamYard. So it goes through StreamYard, all of the templates, the logo, all of those things that I had no clue how to do. How I have poured money into money to get people to help me do this. And it just was always awkward. And it was just, I followed so many things that didn't feel right just because I didn't know how to do it. And I literally sat at the computer, and it's like I would blink and the next thing would be ready. The next email, the welcome sequence was there, the logo was there, the StreamYard was there. It's now on YouTube. We've connected it over to YouTube. She does podcasts, so it's now getting set up to go to a podcast. And it's called Let Her Be Heard. And everything. So we talk through the week, and we think of, we feel the topic. So we always follow by intuition what we feel we should share about, and we just jump on and we share. And it's now just transitioned, because it feels like this is what we're being guided to do, to ask our community. So we have a questionnaire. So we have a place that they can go and anonymously pose what their difficulty is, what they're having trouble with, and what they would like guidance or support or just our perspective around. And now each week we will address something from our community in dialogue for half an hour on Let Her Be Heard. Everything just went. And it's because at the same time, so this was the thing that I wanted to check with you, that you were okay with me sharing. At the same time as I was meeting her, I had also met with somebody else that wanted me to work with them, and it didn't feel right. And I did say no a few times. And because I was so unsure and I didn't know how to do all this, I ended up saying yes. And within the first call, I knew that this was not the right fit for me, and it did not end well. Like I said, I've betrayed my knowing. I knew that I wasn't the right fit. Her work is amazing. It's not that. It's not that. It's about that the work's not. Her work's amazing. It's not for me. But in the process of being able to be honest about that, that was not well received, in my opinion. And it was not a very nice experience at all. But the lesson is, I knew, my gut said, don't do this. This is not the way you want to build your business. That they're not the things, or that I wasn't even after strategy. I was after, help me with my email sequence, help me with my behind the scenes stuff. And the craziest thing is, I actually did know how to do all of that. It was just that it wasn't the right time or the right space or the right, following a very strong gut instinct meant that everything has just been at the tip of my fingers. When we can really tune in and listen, and we can follow whatever it is I get the gut instinct. It's a very physical feeling. It's not really that hard to work out. It's when we're pushing against the knowing. That's my opinion. When I pushed against the knowing and tried to make it fit and told myself that it was just me, that I was just stupid, I didn't know how to learn things, and kept pushing, kept stepping towards things that I knew. And that last experience, I feel like, was the universe saying, how many times do you want to do this? I'm going to make it big enough and uncomfortable enough that you start to slow down and just listen and trust in the path I have for you. And that's exactly what this last 6 weeks feels like, Ange.
Wow.
It's been...
Can I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
What made you override that intuition, that gut feeling? Why did you do it?
Because at that stage, I didn't know how to get myself out there in the way that felt right. Because there's a lot of ways that we can be told how to do business. And a lot of those don't resonate with who I am.
I get
that. So doubt.
Doubting yourself?
Doubting myself, that
like there was something wrong with you because you couldn't find a way to do it?
Yeah, and so the biggest thing for me is that I spent a lot of time thinking that the answer was out there. It was out there with a person, a coach, a program, a step-by-step guide, whatever. The answer's never been out there. It's always been within me. And this was this one last thing. I think I overrode it because I needed to, Ange, because I needed to see what it looks like from the other side, in terms of what it looks like when someone can't hear no, what it looks like when we don't trust in our own journey, what it looks like when you think there's only one way to do something. I needed to see what that sort of fixed mindset looked like and felt like. So I make sure that I'm open to the way I really truly know how to guide people, and that is, we all have our own answers. So it's just doubt. It was doubt that I could do things my own way, because I've been around enough people that say our own way is not the way. And so it was just that confirming that if it doesn't feel right, it's not because I'm not smart enough, and it's not because I'm not skilled enough. It's actually because it's not the way for me, and I'm okay with that. I've heard that that's a limiting belief. I've heard that that's a block. Oh, you've just got to do a bit more growth around that. Actually, no, I'm really sorry. It's not for me. It's just not for me. I don't care. I don't care if there's a particular strategy or a particular way that people build their business and marketing. I don't mind how anybody chooses to do that, Ange. And I don't mind if their way makes millions of dollars for them. If it doesn't feel good in my skin, it's not for me. That's my key indicator. And that's not
so powerful. And I
it's
think
not
it's
a
going to help
fantasy
so
land.
many people, because there's so many loud voices in the entrepreneur world and the business coaches and everything. And there's a lot of very, very loud voices. And it's so easy to get strayed from our own intuition by that. It happens to me all the time. Still now. And I've been doing intuition for 15 years. I still have that part in me where it's the fear of missing out, or you feel that because someone's doing something and they're successful, and maybe you don't feel as successful as you'd like to be at this point, that takes you down that FOMO thing. And once you're in fear, you can't be in the intuition. It's one or the other. They can't live in the same space. And that's exactly what I was talking about in my Facebook Live on my page yesterday. So it's like, I don't believe that we're having this conversation as well. It's that little fear, that little doubt that takes you out of yourself. And it's fine, because you need both to be able, as you said, you need to experience both to know exactly what's happening. And I love that you share the story of intuition of both sides polarity, as you said, because we learn as much from the time when we don't follow our intuition than when we do.
Yeah, and it's that, I guess it's, it ties back into the same message of what I was saying before about trauma and things like that, is that there is a gift in every experience, even if you can't feel it in the moment. Like when I was going through that experience of whatever happened, and I don't want to get into it because obviously, I'm not here to, it's not about the other person. It was never about the other person and what their program was or what they were showing up and saying they would do and how I experienced it. It's nothing about them. It was not right for me. And I'm okay with that, because the minute, and this was the growth point for me, and the gift in this was to be able to see, like last year or the year before, I paid, I invested, a lot of people do, I paid good money, and I felt like it was like, I knew straight away then too, this is not right for me. But because I was fresh and raw and green, I just figured that I was a bad businesswoman because I couldn't do the things that I was being told to do, as in I didn't want to do them, and I just thought they were limiting beliefs and blocks. And she could tell that I was not comfortable with what was happening and offered me a refund halfway through. She said, look, if you're not happy, like, let's just call it quits, which was very honorable for her. I think that's a sign of a really good coach, is to be able to recognize that. But I had it in my head, the story I was telling myself was, I'm just a failure. If I quit now, I'm just a failure. It's me. There's something wrong with me. And so I went through with it and still didn't feel very good at the end of it. Again, nothing to do with her. And this is not their crap at what they do. This is, I know who I am and what's right for me. This time, same thing. I really knew that this was not what I was meant to be entering into. But because there was constant yes, 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 I can do this, we can do that, I did say yes. And then when it became very obvious that what I believed was not right for me was not right for me, I did not continue. That's the growth point. That, okay,
you nipped it in the bud. Yeah,
nipped it in the bud. I'm done. There were just flat out, straight out. I was told there is no refund. I don't do refunds, so I had to kiss that money goodbye. And that's part of the lesson, is that the money was still not important enough to me to keep pushing through on something that literally felt not right. And then in that same moment, I've got this other situation that feels so good. I'm like, and it's been a juggernaut. It has been like, everything has just been effortless and beautiful and enjoyable. And there is no expectation on it from either of us. It has just been the most amazing experience. And it's been that confirmation of what I've always known but doubted. But when we are in the right place and we are tuned into the right, we follow the right feeling and we trust it, I don't even have words for it, Ange. Like, I'm going to get teary because it has just been that amazing to be a part of this with this woman and to know what we are here for and the ripple that we will create because of who we are and who we want other people to be for themselves. It's just, it's like a massive gift. Like the universe just went, you know what? You didn't listen, then you did. Okay, excellent. You're tuned in. Well done.
I love it. You're already in the intuition revolution.
There we go.
You're here. I love it. I absolutely love it. I think it's amazing. So where can people find you, Andrea?
So right now there's a couple of places, because obviously this Let Her Be Heard is another arena that I play in. But mainly at the moment is Soulful Living with Andrea.com.au, or on Facebook and Instagram. So that's me personally. And then we are now branching into a beautiful community. So we do our Let Her Be Heard call it's Friday, the time zone. It's 7 o'clock in Australia, 7 a.m. in Australia. It's 4 p.m. in America, where Barb is from. But they're live. They're on my page. You can check them out there. So, yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And what would you say to someone who's afraid to use their intuition in business?
Why? Why are you afraid? Because afraid to use it, I think is afraid to get something wrong, that maybe it's not right, and some of the decisions that I've made that went against it led me to the very thing. So you can't really get it wrong. There is no wrong. Even if you fought like I did, even though I followed something I knew was not right for me, it still wasn't wrong because of what I learnt from it. How much more I knew about myself, how much more I could tune into that feeling of, why did you go against that feeling? You know what that feeling is. You can't get it wrong.
I suppose perhaps entrepreneurs or business owners might be concerned about other people looking at them, making those decisions and judging them.
But if we're rock solid in who we are, and we absolutely know who we are, nobody else's opinion is going to rock us. So
that's your message, isn't it? That's what you do.
My question is, if you were worried about the outside world, what is it that you're not loving about you right now? Because when we, and not the surface level self-love, but that absolutely, I love who I am and I love what I'm here for, then the voices of the outside world tend to just dull down a little. The only reason that we can sway in the breeze is because we're not grounded in who we are.
Wow, that's such a beautiful way to end this podcast as well. What a message. Andrea, you're a star.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for coming on this podcast. I feel blessed, really blessed. I'm blessed to know you anyway. You know, we've worked together. I've been your client. I would recommend you to anyone who wants to be loved, seen, heard, and held.
Thank you so much. I feel that. I've got goosebumps everywhere, and thank you for seeing me. And
right. I'm going to thank everyone for either watching this video on YouTube or listening to this episode on my podcast. And see you in the next interview then. Bye for now.